Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Friday, July 21st, 2023. And it is currently just after 8 o'clock in the morning. I just jumped out of the shower, as you can see. And that sound is the familiar roar of my kettle. Busy boiling water for my morning cup of coffee. The outside world is unfortunately much the same. It rained during the night. It was just gloomy and cloudy and cold and damp and raining all day yesterday. And it looks like it's going to be the same today. So I'm not leaping out of bed with great excitement, I'm afraid. I find the weather quite depressing. And as I mentioned in a previous video, it's doubly depressing because I realize I brought it on myself by staying in Malaysia as long as I did. I think when I was in Malaysia, that's when the weather was nice here. And I stayed in Malaysia just long enough for all the nice weather in Sumatra to disappear and another rainy season to arrive. So the one potential bright spot is maybe the weather is particularly bad here because I'm at altitude. And I'm even at altitude, because Bukit is a relatively high city. It's up in the mountains. And then my village is right on the slopes of a volcano. And of course, even if you're in a valley, quite often, if you look at the mountains around the valley, the mountains will be covered in clouds, but you in the valley will have blue skies. So maybe once I get the energy together to leave here and then cycle down off the volcano and maybe even down from Bukit, the weather will get better. So that's fingers crossed. That's the only thing I can hope for. But yeah, it's so depressing. Oh man. When I woke up this morning, the first thing I did was just walk over to the window to look up at the sky. I knew what I would see, to look out the window, because I can hear the rain. I can hear the whole world out there just dripping and dripping and dripping. But I wanted to confirm, and I looked out the window, and it's just like gray, depressing, gloomy, gray rain clouds everywhere. Yeah, it's astonishing how much water is here, though. I went out for the walk around the village with Chatty and Thousand the other day, the two high school students, and I learned quite a bit, learned a lot about this place that I didn't know. And one thing I learned is that these, what they call, oh boy, I've forgotten the name, tabak. These tabak, like big water reservoirs, I thought they were fed by rivers and streams, like runoff from the volcanoes. It's raining up there, and then the water gathers in some sort of a stream into a river, and that water is channeled from the river into all these water sources. Like the mosque, for example, the big mosque in the village has a large tabak, and we went to look at it, and to my amazement, and my guides told me, it's perfect for swimming. I mean, it's not. A lot of the tabak you see, are relatively shallow, and they build up a little bit of mold or algae, in the water. But this one was like perfectly clear water, and I don't think it was really this deep, but he said it was 2.5 meters deep down to the bottom. But I don't think it was that deep. But looking down, I was like, wow, that's dive-in depth, and there was crystal clear water. And what he told me was the water feeding that particular tabak was coming from a spring, like a natural spring. The water is just pouring up from the earth and filling this giant pool. And same thing, we saw another tabak from here we climbed higher up on the slopes of the volcano to another village up there, and nestled right in the fold of a valley, there's another mosque that has a very nice tabak. Nothing like the one down below, but I mean, I've noticed it, this big water pool, and people go there to bathe themselves and to do laundry. Oh, we're getting some rattling from my kettle. Once it starts rattling, the metal lid is like rattling, so getting closer to a full boil. Once I see a geyser of steam, then I know it's come to a full boil. But even that one up there, they told me, no, the water isn't coming from a river or a stream. It's actually coming from underground. There's, it's an underground natural spring. Oddly enough, that natural spring, all these natural springs are on a volcano, and Marapi is supposed to be an active volcano. So then you might think, oh, there would be a hot spring, right? But it's all ice cold water coming out from the earth, even though it's coming out of a volcano. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. I see a little bit of a geyser. Not quite ready yet, though. I like my water to get to like the fullest boil. I want the temperature to max out, the highest boiling temperature possible. Get it all nice and rolling. Get my hot cup of coffee. There it is, my coffee. Yeah, as I said, I learned a lot about the village on that day, and I don't think I talked about that at all in my previous behind-the-scenes video. I described the day, but I don't know if I mentioned a few things that I learned. I knew before the day that the people that live here are the Minangkabau people, and they have these traditional communal houses here, very large buildings, where many, many families would traditionally live together, and they call that the Rumah, which means house, Rumah Gadang. So these are the Rumah Gadang. But what I learned was each Rumah Gadang is not associated with the village per se. It's part of a family, or part of a family. So a family group where everyone is related to each other. They all live together in the Rumah Gadang. So a village like this would have several Rumah Gadangs. So each family group would have, if it's a large enough family, and they would have, each would have its own Rumah Gadang. They aren't, used anymore in that way. The village has moved on, so now there are single family dwellings, and the Rumah Gadang has been repurposed, used for, restored and used as a historical building, part of the culture, or I imagine it's used for family gatherings, things like that. The one, as I talked about, the one here that belongs to this family, it's quite old, and it dates from the 1800s, and it was last occupied in the year 2000, I think, 2000 or 2003, and then it's just been sitting empty since then. And it's such a large building, and in need of a lot of repairs that it just couldn't be maintained. It's just too big for the families to keep it up with nobody living in it. So it's kind of falling apart now, and they have been talking about restoring it and even turning it into a museum, again, like a historical building. But it would be quite expensive to do that, and I guess there are quite a few roadblocks in the way of getting something like that done. So the building is still just there, largely untouched since for the last 23 years. I also learned that the people here belong to tribes, and these tribes are separate from the Minangkabau. So everyone here is Minangkabau, but they each belong to a different tribe, which I was not aware of. And then my two guides, my two young guides, each of them belong to a different tribe, even though they are part of the same family. They have a tradition or a custom, or call it a rule, that people from the same tribe can't marry. So if you have a man and a woman getting married, they would be from two different tribes. So within the same family group, all the children of those marriages would be from different tribes, even though they are part of the same family and they are all Minangkabau. And I knew this from before, but I'd forgotten about it, that the Minangkabau are, it's a matriarchal society, and what tribe the children belong to comes from the mother. So the children belong to their mother's tribe, but then they said that the children belong to their mother's tribe, but they follow their father's religion. But I didn't quite understand that because I wasn't aware of there being, different religions. I'm not sure what, they might have meant something else by religion, but certain customs, come down, from the mother's side of the family, and then others from the father's side of the family. And the tribe is from your mother. You belong to your mother's tribe. And in terms of language, I've always been saying Minangkabau. And in my head, I'm translating that as the Minang people, the Minangkabau. And I was referring to the language, the Minangkabau language. Anyway, I was using the word Minangkabau for everything. But I noticed my two young guides, they were saying Minganese. So the language is called Minangese. So they speak Minangese, and they talk about the Minangese culture. That's the word that they were using. So I've been trying to train my brain to say Minangese. And so I was asking them about the Minangese in Java. If they go there, do they understand the language? How close is the language to the national Indonesian language? So they started talking about how no, because the people in Jakarta, they are Sundan, and they speak Sundanese. So I started to hear all these names for the different groups of people and the different tribes and the different languages and things like that. So it was a very informative day. I learned a lot when I went walking with my two young guides. That was really interesting. I don't have stories to tell from yesterday because I didn't do very much. I had all the video from my guided tour to deal with. I had two sets of video. I shot video during our tour, and then I shot video when we went to have a special cup of coffee. And pretty much the entire day, from dawn until midnight, I spent just editing that video. Again, I can't tell you where the time goes. If you watch that video, you'll look at it and go, Doug keeps talking about editing videos, but there's no editing here that I can see. It's like, where's all this fancy editing? Because you think if someone's editing a video, that must mean they've done fancy fade-ins and fade-outs and transitions and music and this and that and all kinds of stuff, editing. But in my case, it is an hour-long video, and it takes the whole day just to, set up the audio tracks, which I have to do for every single video clip, and put, just basically to copy the files, import them into the editing program, edit the audio tracks for each video clip, and then basically do a rough cut. All I do is watch the whole video myself from beginning to end, and then I pick out the sections that I want to keep and the sections that I don't want to keep, and cut it out and delete things and move. I don't move things around generally. I don't do voiceovers. I don't make any kind of a fancy introduction. So that was my day yesterday, just sitting here, laptop on my lap, editing. I went out for lunch one time. There's one place here in town I talked about where I can get some chicken and some rice and some veggies, and I get it to go, and I brought it back here. And I was watching Black Mirror over lunch, and during my downtime, I was watching the new season of Black Mirror. I think it's season 6. I'll talk about that in my pop culture update coming up. And then later in the afternoon, around 5 o'clock or something, I only had that one meal during the day. I had that rice and chicken meal. That was my one meal for the day. And I was feeling a little bit hungry. I wanted a snack, something sweet. So I went out. There's a little shop here in the village that's a little bit more well stocked than the others. There's kind of like a lot of houses here. The family made a little bit of a shop inside their house, and they sell a few things like household essentials, laundry soap, for example, stuff like that. But this one shop has a refrigerator, has a cooler that's plugged in, so it has cold drinks, and they have a freezer, so they have ice cream. And I got it in my head that I wanted ice cream. That was pretty funny. So I go there, and they've got these little, single serving cups of ice cream, and I got 4 of them, 2 vanilla, 2 chocolate. And of course, when you go to pay, they give you one spoon. So I got 4 wooden spoons to go along with it, right? Because they assume, well, you're buying 4 cups of ice cream, must be for 4 people, so they give you 4 spoons, 4 servings. That always makes me smile because, don't tell anyone, but I ate all 4 of them myself. They're small, they're little cups, this big. But yeah, for me to leave here, walk all the way down into the village, all the way down the road, go to the shop, and it's a big event when I go outside because, again, just me walking around the streets is kind of an event here. Everybody wants to say hello. All the children want to come with me. They all want to chat with me, and they try out all their English greetings. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. It's always good morning. So 5 o'clock in the morning, I've got all these children running around me shouting, good morning, good morning, good morning, and I'm saying good morning back. So there's a lot going on when I walk out into the village, and most of the people know who I am by now, so they'll just give me a greeting. But I still run into people all the time who have never seen me before, so they stop their motorcycle and they start asking me questions. Who are you, and where are you staying, and where are you from, and where are you going? And I'm trying to fight through the Indonesian for these conversations. And so by the time I get to the shop, it's already quite an adventure. It takes a lot of social interaction just to go for a short walk. So if I'm going to go to all that effort, I'm not coming out of there with just 1 cup of vanilla ice cream. No. I'm getting 4 at least. To be honest, I wanted 6. But I thought even for me, 6 was kind of embarrassing because I don't want to clean out the whole store, right? They have all this ice cream in there. And if I followed my instincts, I'd go there every day and get 4 cups of ice cream, and then their entire cooler would be empty. Some poor kid after school would be going in there and saying, I really want some ice cream. And they'd have to say, the foreigner ate it all. That'd be pretty funny. Back when I was here before, the drinks cooler was filled with soy milk. So I cleaned them out of soy milk. Every time I went there, I'd have 2 bottles of it. I have one right as soon as I walked out, so good. And I have another one when I came back here. And I wiped out their whole inventory of soy milk. And now for some reason, they're not stocking it anymore. So there is no soy milk. But they did have a shelf full of those tiny bottles of Coke. And I took a chance on one of those, and with my ice cream, I got a little bottle of Coke. And I say take a chance because I didn't know how cold it would be. If it's in a can, you can kind of feel it. It's like, okay, it's ice cold. But this was in the plastic bottles, and then you can't really feel how cold a drink is when it's inside a plastic bottle. The plastic doesn't convey the temperature. So I bought one, and I was very happy when I left. It was like, it was so cold. So I had a little bottle of Coke as I walked along, and I had my knapsack. I was like a squirrel with a nut, rushing back here. I want to get back here quickly, of course. That's another trick here. Like so many people want to stop me and talk with me and chat with me, which is fine when I'm walking to the store. But now when I'm leaving, the clock is ticking because I have the ice cream in my knapsack, and it's starting to warm up and it's starting to melt. So I have to get back here as fast as I can so that the ice cream is still ice cream. If I stop and talk and I have 3 or 4 5-minute conversations on the way back to the house, by the time I get here, it's all melted, and then I don't have any ice cream anymore. But yesterday, I got lucky, and I got back here in plenty of time, and that ice cream was so good, so good. But that was my whole day. Once I finished the ice cream, I dove back into editing, and I did that all night long until I finally exported it. And right now I'm thinking about going to Bukit Tinggi tonight and spending the night in a hotel because I have a backlog of videos and up here. Like I said, I can't upload them. I'm kind of cut off up here. So if I want to upload a video, I have to go to town. I can't do it from up here, which is a bit unfortunate. As I talked about the other day, in theory, I could get mobile data and upload through mobile data, but it takes days to finish, and it would end up costing so much money in terms of mobile data. It's more expensive than spending the night in a hotel. Like if you pay for a hotel room, you get the hotel room and you get access to their Wi-Fi. And it ends up being cheaper to stay in a hotel to upload a video than to do it through mobile data, which I find kind of interesting. So I'm thinking about, after I get settled, I start my day here, looking online. I do have a working SIM card now, so I can book a hotel room. And maybe it's the weekend now, so I might go to Bukitingi for the weekend, spend, today's Friday, maybe I can spend Friday night, Saturday night in Bukitingi, and then come back up here on Sunday. And then during that time, I can explore Bukitingi a little bit, and I can upload videos, you know, get caught up on YouTube. A very demanding life this is, uploading videos to YouTube and documenting your life in video. It takes a lot of time. Now it's time for YouTube stories. I don't have a lot of YouTube stories to tell, only one in fact, because the only video I watched on YouTube, well, the only one that I want to talk about is, again, from Itchy Boots. Well, I was talking about her videos a lot lately because she's riding her motorcycle through West Africa. And I have an interest in that because I did some cycling in one country in West Africa, in Guinea. And I did some cycling in Ethiopia. And I'm very excited about Itchy Boots going to Ethiopia. And I really hope she does the northern loop of Ethiopia. We'll see. A lot of people who, I've talked about this before, they're planning a trip. And for whatever reason, they end up drawing a straight line through as many countries as possible. Rather than exploring the whole interior of the countries, they'll end up seeing just one road that goes through the middle of the country. So I recently started following some cyclists who are going through Africa, and they went through Ethiopia, but because they were coming down from Egypt and then from the Sudan, and they couldn't cross the border from Sudan into Ethiopia, they had to fly. So they flew to Addis Ababa. And from there, because the goal of their journey was to ride north to south through Africa, so they were all concerned about getting to the tip of Africa. So they wanted to, you know, they're on their way to South Africa, and that's their goal for their trip. So when they're in Addis Ababa, the natural thing to do is just start riding south. So they never even went to the whole northern plateau of Ethiopia, and that's where, you know, so much of Ethiopia's history is located. So much of the beauty, so much of the interest is all in the north of Ethiopia. The mountainous plateaus, the Simien Mountains, Lalibela, the ancient capital city of Axum, the border area, you know, with Eritrea. There's just a lot going on in the north of Ethiopia. And so many people end up skipping it because they're doing a journey through all of Africa. So instead of, you know, roaming around, they'll just go straight across or straight down. You know, they don't actually go off in different directions. So we'll see what Itchy Boots ends up doing. I don't know what her route is. I'm assuming, yeah, I don't think she's ever said, but I'm assuming just because of the geography and the political situation in various countries, she's just going to come down through West Africa, go all the way down to the south, and then turn around and then go all the way back to the north and exit through Egypt. Like do all of Africa. That would make the most sense because she would eventually return to Europe that way. If she can't really go from West Africa through Central Africa to Ethiopia and then go down and end her journey in South Africa. Just geographically and politically, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I think she'd have to go this way through west, then down to south, and then back up through east to the north. Yeah, I think that's what she's going to do. Actually, she may even do a complete loop. That would be pretty amazing. Back up to Egypt and then west again, you know, through Libya and places like that. But I don't know how open a lot of these countries are, how safe they might be to go through. Anyway, we'll see. But I'm very interested to see if she does go through northern Ethiopia. But anyway, I'm kind of interested in Africa as a travel destination, so that's why I'm following her videos quite carefully. And in my other behind the scenes video, I was talking about how in Liberia she encountered a muddy section of road, and there's an area where she had a lot of trouble, and she fell over on her motorbike. There was a big truck was stuck in the mud. Nobody could get past it, so they actually carved a detour to go around it, and the road was kind of on an angle, you know, it wasn't a real road. And she tried to go up and around, and she lost control of her motorbike and fell over, and her leg was even trapped under the motorcycle for a few seconds. And then a bunch of guys came, helped pick up the motorcycle, and then and at that point, as I talked about at length, one of the men who was trying to help her took it upon himself to jump on her motorbike, and because he knows the area and he's done this many times, he considers himself to be skilled at getting a motorbike through this mud, and he just saw Nora Lee fall over, so he was probably thinking, well, she probably doesn't know how to drive her motorcycle through these conditions, and I'm going to help her. So he hopped on her motorcycle, started it up, and I'm guessing that Nora Lee, was not happy about that and would have preferred to do it herself, but she let the situation unfold. And this guy rode her motorcycle almost like through nearly all of the muddy sections. And I didn't find out until quite late in the video. It was kind of interesting. Again, I love logistics and technology and behind the scenes. After this was all over, or almost all over, Nora Lee said that the GoPro on her helmet mount, the battery, died right in the middle of all this. And there was so much going on with the mud, and everything was sticky and mud flying everywhere and puddles, and she didn't feel like stopping and taking the time to replace the battery. So she was getting no video from her GoPro, the one on her chin mount. So that whole time this was easily the most dramatic event of her entire Africa series so far. And you can tell that because it was such a dramatic event. She's using up a lot more video than she normally does. She's smarter than I am, obviously, and she will post basically 20-minute videos because she knows that's the sweet spot for YouTube. She's not going to post an hour-long video of just going for a stroll through one village, right? So yeah, she aims for like 20 to 25 minutes, I think. Is that like 25? I think is her like maximum. But in this case, there was so much going on that she divided it up into 3 videos. So this one sequence of getting through the mud, so far it's taking up 3 videos, and each video is 20 minutes long. And but it is the most dramatic thing she's encountered so far, and it's so dramatic she's including an hour of video total devoted to this one event, divided into 3 videos. But even though it is so dramatic, she has no video at all of her own from her own GoPro because the battery died, and she was just so frantic and so caught up in this situation. She never, and probably the fresh battery was probably on her motorcycle, and quite a bit of the time it was far ahead of her because this guy was gunning her motorcycle through the mud, and then Nora Lee, Itchy Boots, was walking behind it. So I found that kind of interesting. So a lot of the video, luckily, the GoPro on the motorcycle was still running. She has a GoPro Mini mounted on her handlebars, and then she has a full GoPro Hero 11, I assume, on her helmet. And her Hero 11, the battery was dead, but the Mini battery was still going. And that, I think, is an internal battery. You can't even replace it. So she's quite lucky that she had battery power in the Mini. And she has a 360 camera mounted on her handlebars all the time. But I don't think she uses it very often. I can tell when she switches from one to the other based on how the video looks and then the perspective, whether it's coming from the left or the right side of her handlebars. And it's pretty rare that I see 360 video. So I don't think that camera was running during this getting through the mud portion. But yeah, I could relate to that because the GoPro batteries die so often you know, and they always die at the exact worst time. You're like in the middle of something you really want to film, and that's when the battery dies, like every single time, you know, it never fails. And in terms of technology, the other thing that surprises me, I can understand it, but I also find it to be disappointing. She didn't shoot any drone video. So far, at least, there's no drone video, and I could kind of understand it because she's stuck in the mud. Someone else is driving or riding her motorcycle. It's a chaotic, crazy situation, and she's so focused on just getting her motorcycle out of the mud. She did this really interesting thing in the video that made the whole video for me, that as the guy riding her motorcycle was moving along, they passed vehicle after vehicle after vehicle that was stuck in the mud. And she put up a little vehicle counter on the video itself, like stuck, you know, vehicle counter, like vehicle stuck in the mud counter. And I think the last I checked on the video, it had reached into the 30s or 40s. Huge trucks just sunk up to the axles in mud. And as she talked to these people, you know, she learned, not surprisingly, that some of them had been there for a month. Their truck got stuck in the mud, and then trucks got stuck behind them, trucks got stuck in front of them, and now basically they're all stuck, and none of them can move. Even if they could perform a miracle and get their truck unstuck, they can't go anywhere because there are 30 or 40 vehicles stuck all around them blocking the road. And they've been there for over a month, just hanging out and waiting. And I guess they have to wait until the dry season, and then I guess heavy equipment is going to have to come down, and the very first truck, the one at the front of the traffic jam, they got to pull it loose. Then basically one by one by one, they have to work through the whole row. So this is the most astonishing traffic jam I have ever seen in my life. It's incredible what, you know, Itchy Boots went through here. And as I talked about before, I've watched a lot of these documentaries based in Africa about trucks trying to make it through these dirt roads, you know, during the rainy season, how they get stuck in the mud over and over and over again, and how difficult it is to get the truck out. And if the truck breaks down in the middle of the route, you know, these people can be stuck for weeks, like days and weeks, sitting there. You know, they have to guard the truck too. They can't just walk away and leave it because it would be looted. So they have to stay there, and they're sleeping out in the bush, being eaten alive by bugs. And I mean, tough, a very tough situation. So I've seen a lot of these documentaries of trucks stuck in the mud in Africa, but nothing I saw came anywhere near what Itchy Boots encountered on this road in Liberia. I mean, it's absolutely insane, that whole situation that she encountered. Yeah, really quite something. So, given all of that, what I really wanted to see was a drone shot. I'm usually not excited about drone shots. I've talked about that before, but I really wished she had stopped at one point to get her drone out and then flew the drone over this road, like all 30 to 40 trucks, and just get an overhead, you know, aerial video of this area and all the trucks stuck in the mud. That would have been spectacular. I would have loved to have seen that. But so far, I've seen 2 of the videos she shot during this sequence, and yeah, no drone shot yet. And again, I can understand it. It would mean stopping her motorcycle and, you know, covered in mud, covered in water, getting out the drone, flying it, and yeah, this is another part of her journey, I guess. She probably was thinking, well, she has to get to Abidjan. That day, her goal was to get all the way out of Liberia, cross the border with the Ivory Coast, you know, Côte d'Ivoire, and then get to the capital city of Abidjan, because she still needs to get repairs done to her motorcycle. And in terms of a travel experience, it's like, man, that's tough. In the last video I saw, she made it out of the mud, more or less. She's out of the muddy section. And then she said she still has 500 kilometers to cover before she gets to Abidjan. And she's going to do this all in one day, right? That's crazy. I mean, that is, I just can't even imagine it. Again, I think I'm putting myself in her position. What would I want to do? And it's a little bit different again because, well, it's very different because I'm a guy and I can do things alone, independently, a little bit easier than she can. I don't have as many concerns, obviously. So once she got, if I were in her situation and I got my motorcycle out of the mud, and there was a little cluster of buildings there. There was an area. She actually had something to eat, and there was a place where they could wash her motorcycle. Doug, he's spending the night there. It's like, I'm done. Like, the effort of getting through that mud, I'm done for the day. It's like, I'm finished. I'm not riding 500 kilometers to Abidjan. I'm spending the night here. I don't care where it is. You know, I'm finished for the day. That's enough adventure for me for one day. But her goal was to get out of that mud and then all the way to the capital city of the Ivory Coast. Just absolutely, it's crazy. So I think part of the reason she didn't shoot drone, that she didn't change the GoPro battery, all that kind of stuff, is she just felt like she was, didn't have time. She had to go and get out of this mud and get back on the road. And the way this whole story unfolded, she didn't want this guy, you know, riding her motorcycle, mainly because her motorcycle was having mechanical problems and he was gunning it, you know, like he was riding it too hard. And she quite often during the sequence would talk to him and say, no, God, you know, stop. You gotta, don't ride it so hard. Don't push it so hard. Don't hit the throttle like you're doing it. But of course, from his point of view, that's the only way you're getting out of the mud. I mean, if you stop, like if you have any momentum going, and then for whatever reason you're not gunning it and the motorcycle stops, well, now you're stuck again and you need everybody to push you out. So if you have any kind of momentum, you just have to keep that momentum going. And he just all the way through. And I felt so sorry for Itchy Boots. I could just imagine what she was thinking this whole time. And then they reached a point where she got back on the motorcycle. She was going to ride it from that point on. And then as soon as she tried to start the bike, she couldn't get it into gear. And basically the guy who had been riding her motorcycle so hard, he'd burned the clutch. I don't know exactly what happens. I've heard this phrase my whole life. You know, the clutch plates were burned. So she was trying to release the clutch so she could, you know, get the bike into gear. But the clutch wasn't working. You know, because there's like two plates that go together. They separate, and then that's basically what the clutch is. And then they come together, and then one, you know, spins the other one around, and then you release the clutch, change the gear, and then engage the clutch again. And they have teeth on them, so the teeth engage. But this guy had been riding the clutch tightly, and the teeth were like, it didn't fully engage, so the teeth were like scraping over top of each other, and it basically flattened the clutch plates. They had no more teeth. I may be describing this and completely wrong, but basically the clutch had been burned. He burned the clutch, so the plates wouldn't engage anymore. They just sort of slid over top of each other. And yeah, basically the clutch wasn't working, and you couldn't change gears anymore. So it's like, she got through all of that mud, but now she has 500 kilometers to ride to get to the capital. And she couldn't get it out of second gear. And then it was so funny, I could relate to that. She kept trying, and she eventually managed to get it up into fourth gear so she could ride faster. And then she ran into a roadblock. You know, it's very common in Africa, in West Africa. People just pull a rope across the road, security, or it could be villagers doing it, who knows. And then she was finally got it into fourth gear, and she's like zooming along, like, oh, I got to get to the capital city. And then she runs into one of these roadblocks, and she's got to gear down and stop. And the guy, where are you going? Where are you from? And all the official stuff. And then she couldn't get it out of second gear again. So she's like, moving so slowly. And she's like, So there's one more video to come, and she teased it. at the very end of video number 2, she included a little clip of someone in another motorbike in front of her motorbike, and it looked like they were tying them together with a piece of rope. So someone was going to pull her bike and maybe get her bike up to speed and maybe pull her all the way to a village where there's a mechanic, but no, that's not going to happen. Could they pull her up to speed and then she can engage the clutch and get it into gear if she's already moving fast enough? I don't know. So I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do with this motorbike pulling her motorbike, but she's still in trouble. So at the end of the second video, she's still in a lot of trouble there in Liberia. So that is my YouTube story update. So actually, I haven't checked. It'll probably be a couple of days before she posts video number 3, since I have the power of the internet right now. I can check to see what is going on with Itchy Boots. And I was talking last time a little bit about the title of her video, and I was very curious. This was when I watched video number 1, and I saw that video number 2, it said, "This broke my motorcycle." And you know, she always has big white letters on the thumbnail, and it says destroyed, you know. So yeah, she wants people to click on the video, so she's making it as exciting as possible. And I was curious how true this was. I mean, obviously her motorcycle is having, you know, mechanical problems. That's pretty clear. And getting through this mud is very, very difficult. But she says, you know, broke my motorcycle. So I was wondering, does that mean like broke it? Like it broke down and can't move? You know, that's what she's implying. And I was curious whether that is true or not, or whether she's doing a little bit of a clickbait thing. And it's actually kind of, it toes the line between true and clickbait, because technically it didn't break down. She can still ride it. At least at the end of that video, it was still working. She could start the engine. She could get it in first or second gear. So she's still making progress. So technically, the motorcycle did not break. It was not destroyed. But at the same time, a burnt clutch plate, like her clutch completely burnt out with 500 kilometers to cover before she can even get new clutch plates. Yeah, okay, that's broke. I mean, that's a broke motorcycle, you know. Sure, it's moving. So this one, I'll give her that. She can get away with that. You know, this broke my motorcycle. Didn't really break it, but okay. I'll let you get away with that one. That man, poor Itchy Boots with her broke motorcycle. Yeah, she's got 3 videos there about this road. Africa's worst road, then things take a turn for the worst, and now this broke my motorcycle, and now there's going to be another one, all about this one road. Yeah. I was thinking yesterday when I was watching that video, how would it have been for me if I were riding my bicycle through that area? And in a way, a bicycle is better, because no matter what the barrier is in front of you, no matter how deep the mud, because I encountered nothing. I've never encountered anything like that. But I do remember in the Philippines on a bike tour encountering a road like that, which was impossible to ride through. I mean, the mud and the water was so deep, you just couldn't do it. There was no way to ride from one end of that road to the other. But a bicycle, you can pick it up, right? So all I did was take all the bags off my bike, and then I just picked up my bicycle and I just waded through the mud and the water, and I just walked and walked and walked and carried my bicycle, and then I went back and got all my bags, and then I would just leapfrog like that, just carry my bike, carry my bags, carry my bike, carry my bags, and I did that all the way until I got to the end of the muddy section of the road, and I could just put my bike back together and keep going. So in a way, a bicycle is a bit, you know, it would have gotten through this situation a bit easier because I could just walk through it with a bicycle. However, it's not quite that simple, because it looked like this was very long, like a very, long stretch of road. We're not talking about, 1 kilometer, maybe. Actually, it's hard to tell how long this stretch was. But it would have been a bit difficult from a security point of view, because to do that, you can't carry your bicycle with all its bags on it. All you could do is take all your bags off, and then you'd have to carry everything in stages. And then if you do that, of course, you have to leave all your gear behind, and then you can't protect it. So you have to carry your bike and then go back. And by the time you get back, all your bags are gone. But I guess you could hire people. Like, there'd be people there. All the people, the people were helping her. Yeah, you talk to some people, and I might say to them, listen, I'll pay you this much. Can you carry my bags? You get 3 men, and then you carry the bicycle. You divide your bags up amongst these guys, and then you all walk together and just keep walking and trudge through the mud till you get to the end, and thank you very much, and pay them, and away you go. That's probably what would have happened, if I were there on my bicycle. But of course, I also would have gone much slower. I would have, who knows, maybe in the middle of it, I might have joined some of these guys. I'm sure they're camping out beside their trucks. And then, just spend the night there. That would be an interesting experience. And of course, at the end of the mud, as I said, I would have spent the night in that town. I would have had a tent with me and things like that. So you can, even if they don't have any sort of shelter, there's no hotels way out there. But, you can spend the night in your tent before moving on. So thus ends YouTube stories for today. And I will end today's behind-the-scenes video with a pop culture update. I mentioned that I've been watching Season 6 of Black Mirror, the newest season. And it's been around for a while. I think it aired quite a few months ago, but I never got around to watching it. And I'm watching it now, and I have a few thoughts about it. Overall, this season, Season 6, feels weaker than all the other seasons. Like, I remember each season, if I go back, I have it called up on Wikipedia now, and I go back through all the previous seasons, and I see the names of the episodes, and they remind me, and I'm like, oh yeah, oh man, that, like, every episode seemed powerful. I had this idea of what Black Mirror is all about. I mean, it's heavily, of course, into technology and the effect of technology in our lives. And they push the limits of storytelling. So Black Mirror is an extremely challenging show to watch and powerful show. I have really strong memories of so many of the episodes. But this season, they call them series. It's a British show. They don't call them seasons. I should call them series. So this is Series 6. Is not quite at the same level, I'm finding, except for the first episode. I was really excited because I watched the first episode, and it is called Joan is Awful. Where is it? Series 6. Yeah. Joan is Awful, written by Charlie Brooker. And I think Charlie Brooker, he's the one of the original creators of Black Mirror. So it kind of makes sense that Joan is Awful, episode 1, is classic Black Mirror. Really interesting, provokes so many emotions, so many thoughts, so many ideas. I really enjoyed Joan is Awful. And I'm tempted to dive into it and talk about it, but I really can't because I wouldn't want to give away anything about it. Like, even the smallest plot point, I think it's an episode you really want to discover. You want to be surprised by it and just go along for the ride all the way to the end. I wouldn't want to take that away from anyone. I enjoyed that one so much, and I thought, okay, Black Mirror is back. That is amazing. And then I went on to the others. I watched episode 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's 5 episodes in total. Oh, interesting. They're all written by Charlie Brooker. I was assuming that episode 1 classic would be written by Charlie Brooker, and then I thought there'd be all different writers, but episode 2, Charlie Brooker, 3, Charlie Brooker, 4, Charlie Brooker, 5-1, Charlie Brooker, and Bisha K. Ali. I haven't watched episode 5 yet. I've only watched 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they're all good. It's excellent television, no question about that. You know, it's well worth watching. But it doesn't feel like Black Mirror to me. It actually feels more traditional television, like serial killers and the supernatural, things like that. And there is one is heavily into technology, and yet somehow the technology didn't play as big a part in the plot as I thought it would. It felt like a show that could have unfolded outside of a Black Mirror environment. You know, the actual show and what happened, the events. It was like, okay, that it was very engaging and interesting, but it felt like the whole thing could have played out without the technology. It was sort of like a typical standard sort of story. So overall, it does feel like a weaker series to me, Series 6, other than the first episode. Yeah, the first episode I enjoyed a lot. Joan is awful. I love the title and everything that happens in it. I just thought it was so imaginative, inventive, surprising, you know, engaging. I really loved that. And then it kind of went a little bit more ordinary, not as heavily into technology as I was expecting. Yeah, I guess I don't have a whole lot to say about it because, as I said, I can't really talk about the episodes without giving away, you know, what they're about. But yeah, so I have one more episode of Black Mirror to watch, the episode 5, and I think that's the last one of the series. So that, I believe, is a pop culture update. And with that, yeah, I'm going to shut down my camera. The end of today's behind-the-scenes podcast journal from Planet Doug, and I'll see you in the next one. And as I said, once I get set up here, I'm going to have another cup of coffee, and I'm going to plan. I think I'm going to think about, as I said, going into Bukitingi and spending the night there for 2 nights, just so I can use Wi-Fi and upload a bunch of videos, and you know, then I can move on from there. We'll see what happens. All right, I'll see you in the next video.